morning, everyone. If I can ask everybody to take your seats, and while we're always happy to have a big scrum of press here, we're going to have to ask you to get your last shots and move back if you can. There'll be plenty of time through the day. Good morning, everyone. A short while ago, I thought we would change the title for this event to One Belt, One Road, and One New York Monsoon. But I'm glad everybody made it okay. I'm Tom Nagorski. I'm the Executive Vice President of the Asia Society. We are delighted to have all of you here, to have our distinguished guests here. And as I said, we want to get started. Just a very important small detail. You all have simultaneous translation devices at your seats. If you don't raise your hand, and an Asia Society staffer will find you. Mandarin on channel 2, English on channel 1. So 1 month ago, actually 1 month exactly to the date, in Beijing, China's President Xi Jinping convened a global gathering of world leaders to discuss the Belt and Road Initiative. I don't need to tell anybody in this room, it's not only China's signature initiative of its kind at the moment, it is probably the most ambitious such undertaking, at least in terms of potential and some of the numbers attached to it, in history. Today, 1 month later, we gather with distinguished guests, many of whom were there in Beijing 1 month ago, to look at next steps not only for the Belt and Road Initiative, but also for the broader U.S. China economic relationship as well. Fair to say, again, not something this crowd really needs to know or hear from me, but this is a time of profound uncertainty for the U.S. and China. Also fair to say, not many people in this country have a strong understanding of what exactly the Belt and Road Plan entails. Certainly there is great curiosity, and size of the audience this morning, and all those cameras are testament to that, and it's why we're here. On behalf of everyone here at the Asia Society, we are delighted to have all of you here, distinguished guests and a great audience. And our great thanks to the delegation from China for as your we get questions all the time here about the Belt and Road Initiative, and we hope that this is only the first of many occasions when we can answer not just the basic questions, but really look at how it plays out in the years to come. To get us started, I'm delighted to welcome to the stage the former Minister of the State Council Information Office of China, well known for his efforts at public diplomacy in his country and around the world. Please welcome, to start us off, Mr. Zhao Qicheng. Thank you.
I 先介绍一下在主席台上的各位尊敬的先生和女士。陆克文先生是亚洲协会政策研究院院长，澳大利亚第26任总理，是在中国是很有名的人物。董建华先生
Prime Minister of Australia, very famous personage in China. Mr. Dong Jianhua, he is the Deputy Chairman of the National People's Congress of China, the 12th one, Consolidated Congress. Ms. Shi Jingshi, she is CEO of Asian Society.
崔天凯先生是中国驻美国特命全权大使。
He is the Ambassador Plenipotentiary of China to the United States.
那边的郭卫民先生是中国国务院新闻办公室副主任。
The Deputy Chairman of the
魏建国先生是中国商务部原副部长、中国国际经济交流中心副理事长。
He is ex-Vice Minister of the Ministry of Commerce, and also.
今天呢，现在就是开始一个主旨发言。
Now,
那么有几位来演讲了，第一位就是陆克文先生。
The first one is
Well, thank you very much, Zhao. I intend to speak English.
我打算说英文。
I will speak English with an Australian accent to make it even more difficult for you. First of all, it's such a good opportunity to have our friends from China with us today. It was my privilege to participate in the global conference on the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, a month ago in Beijing. A number of us were there, and the first impression you take from that gathering was just how big it was. This is a proposal of genuinely global dimensions. That's why we're so pleased to have an audience such as this. Our good friend C.H. Tung, you yourself, Mr. Zhao, Ambassador Cui Tiankai from Washington, who we all know, a deeply respected Chinese diplomat, and the custodian of the U.S. China relationship. No pressure. Okay. But also Ambassador Zhang Qiyue, who is the Consul General of the People's Republic of China here in New York. Our other distinguished friends from Beijing, Wei Jianguo, and of course Guo Weimin. Our own President, Joseph Shirin, who's a strong supporter of the U.S. China relationship. And of course we have many Asia Society trustees here today. And I see some of them. I see Lulu. Who else do I see? Denise is there. Wim Kukia. And who else have I missed? We have other trustees here as well. Lovely to see you. But more importantly, we're here today to try and understand this phenomenon, and this phenomenon called One Belt, One Road. Or, as I see in Beijing, we now call it the BRI, the Belt and Road Initiative. What we try to do in the Asia Society and the Policy Institute is to act as a bridge. And that is, when there are lacks of knowledge, where there are areas of non-comprehension between these two great countries, the United States and China, we have seen our historical role as to act as a bridge between the two, including in times when this was not particularly popular. The Asia Society has been around for a long time. It's even older than I am. And it's been playing this role over more than 6 decades now. And so therefore, back in the days when there were no diplomatic relations between China and the United States, the Asia Society was building bridges between the two countries. Since diplomatic recognition in '79, they've been building more bridges between China and the United States. We see ourselves here as professional bridge builders. That's what we do. And that is the unique contribution of the Asia Society and the Asia Society Policy Institute, its think tank, of which I'm proud to be president. On the question of the BRI itself, there are many questions which are raised in the domestic discussion here in the United States. Number one, people look at the BRI and they look at the U.S.-China relationship, and on the BRI in particular they say, this is very big. When they start looking at the numbers here in the United States, they see something actually which, in its ambition, is bigger than the Marshall Plan. In fact, several times bigger than the Marshall Plan. So in the United States, people are first affected by the sheer scale of what is being proposed. Number two, in the United States, they also know that the direction of the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, across Eurasia is a vast, complex, and difficult. The United States, as the world's remaining superpower, understands global. And so when they look at this part, they know how difficult the geopolitics are, they know how difficult the geoeconomics are, they know how difficult the local security is, they know how difficult some of the national economic cultures are. And so the second question which often is asked in this country is, how will China cope with this? Because this is very much what we would say in Latin, terra nova, new territory in China's global experience. If there's a third question which is raised in the domestic discussion here in the United States, it's along these lines. It's how will it work in practice? They've read all the reports They've seen all the numbers. They know it's big. They know it's pointed west, not east. That is, west of China, not across the ocean. But then the questions become these. How much money will actually be invested? How will it be invested? Will the Chinese major financial institutions be those which control the finance? What will be the role of Chinese construction companies for the infrastructure projects which are planned? And then there are particular questions about the nature and the transparency of the commercial processes. Then there are questions about when infrastructure is finally built, will it be build, own, operate? Will it be build, own, train? Will it be retained in partial or complete ownership by Chinese authorities? Or will it be a cocktail of the above? These are very practical questions. And so that's where the US business sector comes in, and they ask questions like, well, is this going to work on transparent commercial grounds? Which brings us to the fourth question raised in the United States is this something in which corporate America can actually have a role? Or will it be largely reserved for Chinese financial institutions and Chinese construction enterprises? Being an Australian, I tend to put these questions fairly bluntly, but I think it's good for clarifying the conversation. Because as I listen to my American friends, these are the series of questions which are asked. Of course, there's a fifth question asked as well, which I think probably goes beyond the scope of our gathering today, but I should record it. It's where does this all go in terms of the long-term geopolitics of Eurasia, the future of Central Asia, the future of Southeast Asia, the future of South Asia, the Middle East, and of course Europe. Because when we talk about something called the New Silk Road, we know what it did in history at one scale. This, however, is a very big Silk Road. It's not just on land, it's also on the sea, but it's of an order of magnitude which Marco Polo and his friends would never have dreamt of. So what then flows from all this in terms of global geopolitics? So there are 5 questions which I think present itself to us all as we begin this discussion. I said to my Chinese friends before we entered the room here today, here we are in the United States, and it's a robust, open, and episodically impolite society. I say that because I know them and I like them. And so there'll be questions which will come from some of our American guests, which will be fairly straight and fairly blunt, but that's the way it is in this country. But I see there is great wisdom in what our Chinese friends, led by Mr. Zhao and C.H. Tung and his delegation and the ambassador, in embarking upon a series of open public consultations in order to explain China's aspirations, but also to hear the questions which are being put honestly and openly by our friends in the United States as well. And that's the spirit which I hope will underpin our dialogue here today. There's plenty of opportunity to go through the details of what is before us, both the BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, but also our other object today is to discuss progress in the U.S. China first 100 days economic dialogue, that which was agreed upon between President Xi Jinping and, of course, President Trump of the United States at Mar-a-Lago. If you like, the first 100 days is important in itself. It's real, live, contemporary commerce and politics. One Belt, One Road is not about the first 100 days, it's about the next 100 years. That will be equally interesting. So what we're dealing with here today is the immediate term and the long term, and where they intersect. And I can't think of a better group of people to participate in this conversation than we have with us today. So thank you, Mr. Zhao, thank you, CH, and thank you to the Ambassador and Ambassador Zhang for your participation today. Let's have a genuinely good, open and lively exchange. I thank you very much.
陆克文先生提出了5个大问题，下面可能藏着50个小问题。 那么在座的双方的
Hidden
专家
behind them are 50 smaller questions. I hope some of you will be able to answer some of them, so we will have a good result of our meeting. Now I shall call on Mr. Dong to make a keynote speech.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Having been a resident in the New York area for 7 years, coming to New York, always a happy event for me. And the opportunity to appear in front of many, many friends in the Asia Society is particularly very warming for me. So thank you for inviting us, and we look forward to a very constructive and useful discussion. I thought, what should I be contributing to this? You know, and there'll be many, many distinguished scholars and experts be talking about economic relations, and others will be talking about Road and Belt initiative and so on and so forth. So I thought I would let them talk about those particular issues. What I want to do is to talk about U.S. China relation itself, how important it is. Modern day U.S. China relationship began with Richard Nixon's visit to Chairman Mao in Beijing in 1972. And since then, 9 presidents of the United States, 5 leaders of China have worked to strengthen the relationship, knowing very well that a good relationship between the two countries is very, very important, not only for the two countries, but also for the world at large. Today, we can all take heart in the successful summit meeting between President Trump and President Xi this April in Florida. Although much work still needs to be done, it was a positive beginning. This is a good omen that the relationship under their watch can move forward constructively. Today's occasion is for the purpose of examining how to take the U.S.-China relationship forward. As there will be many experts on both sides who will talk on many of these topics, I will speak on U.S.-China economic relation only in the context of overall U.S.-China relations. Look back into history, the modern U.S.-China relationship that was initiated in 1970, President Nixon and Chairman Mao Zedong, was anchored by the common objective against the Soviet Union hegemonic aspirations. By the time of the fall of Berlin Wall, this was no longer relevant. Since then, the U.S.-China relation has been very much anchored on an interdependent economic relationship. As China's nation-building progressed, trade in goods and services between the two countries began to grow. Investment from U.S. to China has always been a feature of this relationship, but now Chinese investment into the United States is also becoming an important factor for both countries. At the same time, people-to-people exchange between the two nations has grown. In particular, the large number of students and tourists from China to the United States have not only helped both peoples understand each other better, but also played a meaningful contribution to the economy. Looking into the future, the economic relationship between the two countries will be increasingly complementary and will always be important. But I believe the U.S.-China overall relationship should not be anchored on the economic relationship alone. In fact, in recent years, the U.S. and China have collaborated together in a number of important global areas which has yielded some success. The first major example was in 2008 when U.S. and China was faced with enormous challenges as a result of global financial crisis. U.S. economy was declining rapidly and Chinese economy was badly affected. Global economy was in a tailspin. To confront this, President Bush called for the G20 meeting in the United States. The United States prepared for a massive stimulus of $700 billion and asked China to respond in a significant way. China responded quickly. This was the first time the two countries worked together financially in the global common good. These actions prevented a global meltdown. Climate change is a good example. To start with, it was the United States initiative which led to a determined effort between the United States and China. This joint effort eventually led to Paris Climate Change Accord, an agreement which will stand as one of the most positive and consequential global agreements in recent history. I know that the U.S. has wavered to move forward, but I'm only emphasizing that it is very important that the U.S. not only stays in the agreement, but continues to be in the lead. There was press speculation that China is delighted in the U.S. withdrawal from this agreement because China would then become the undisputed leader. This cannot be further from the truth. The Paris Accord is a serious effort to reduce the threat of climate change. It is an effort that involves almost every nation in the world. Throughout these efforts, the involvement of U.S. and China was crucial. America's absence in the future will be badly missed and will set back the global effort significantly. So much on climate change. Another example of collaboration by the two countries was in 2016 when U.S. and China collaborated in West Africa to confront the Ebola disease outbreak. As a result of the efforts of the two countries, we were able to successfully overcome the disease before further damage was done. Lastly, but most importantly, the other effort that the two countries are collaborating on very closely is to the environment to ensure there is nuclear-free and peaceful Korean Peninsula. The difficulty of this effort is enormous. Without U.S. and China working together on this, the situation will be dire. With the two countries working together, it is still going to be very difficult, but at least it gives us all some hope. Today, the fact is that the world is faced with many other challenges that need urgent attention. These include building a nuclear-free world, preventing militarization of outer space, managing cyberspace, and enhancing cybersecurity, saving our seas from overfishing, acidification, and buildup of rubbish, combating terrorism, and managing global hotspots, and etc., and etc. No single country can address these challenges alone. Multilateral approach will be necessary, and the involvement of big power is crucial. But initiatives agreed to between the United States and China from the very beginning can help the eventual success of our common efforts. I believe that contributing to global common good is a noble and good cause for the two countries to take on. But for the U.S. and China to work closely together on many of the above challenges, the two countries need to understand each other a great deal more. Generally, what are the strategic intents? What are our economic and social development objectives? What are our challenges and worries? In other words, what are the things good friends know about each other? For each of the above challenges that we may be working on together, we need to be very open about each other's motives and purposes and share information more openly. Above all, we need to bear in mind that the ultimate purpose of working together is for a better world and for a better relationship between our two countries. The general level of understanding has improved in recent years, but it is not enough. For Americans to understand China more, I would like to take this opportunity to talk to you about China. Many people are unaware of China's recent past. Therefore, I shall begin to address this issue with the date October 1st, 1949. This is the date when People's Republic of China was formally established. At that time, the country had just from many years of civil war and the war of resistance against Japan. The country was devastated by war, exhausted, and basically bankrupt. Life expectancy of Chinese people was only 35 years. Infant mortality rate was as high as 20%, and the illiteracy rate at 80%. There was little provision for education and practically no provision for medical care and social services. Infrastructure was non-existent. People suffered extreme misery and hardship. But what still remained was the spirit of the Chinese people. And this date, October 1st, 1949, marked the beginning of the rebirth of a nation. 68 years onward, where are we today? China today is the second largest economy in the world. 600 million people have been lifted out of poverty. Essential infrastructure has been built. Education, healthcare, and other forms of social services are provided for. Life expectancy is now 76 years. The infant mortality rate is 9%, illiteracy down to 4%. What's more, a closed society has become more open. Indeed, there has been an unprecedented expansion of individual freedom. The government has firmly committed itself to the building of a just society governed by the rule of law and protection of human rights. Never in the history of man has such progress been made in such a short period of time. So where does China go from here? With a population of 1.4 billion people and a GDP per capita of $8,000, she is still a developing nation. Therefore, China will continue to work hard in nation building and eventually join the ranks of the developed nations. And this, my friends, will take many, many years. You may ask internationally, what is China's strategic intent? China wishes to pursue peace and shared prosperity with all nations around the world, particularly with her neighbors. China has no hegemonic or ideological ambitions. China does not wish to impose her system or values to other nations. The truth is that hegemonic aggression is not in the DNA of Chinese people. At the height of the Ming Dynasty, when China had 30% of the world GDP and a fleet of ships cruising back and forth along the maritime Silk Road, China never exhibited aggression intent to colonize or occupy territories. To the Chinese people, peace is always above all. China's military expansion is only for national defense purposes. The fact is that her military expenditure at a level of below 2% of GDP is comparatively low by any standard. China recognizes that in order to pursue peace, she needs to construct a credible deterrent to prevent war against her by others. And this is what China is doing. With this worldview, China places great emphasis on seeking to build a constructive relationship with all nations. But a good relationship with the United States is particularly important. But this is not easy. After all, people of the United States and China have different culture, different history, and the two countries are at different stage of development. Our needs are very different. At this stage, it is even more important, in my view, for us to understand each other better and to trust each other's goodwill and intentions more. Indeed, every time we are able to overcome a global challenge together, as stated in the above, should help us to move the U.S. China relationship closer. On this foundation, a constructive relationship will always be possible. Too much is at stake for the Chinese and American people, for the world at large. Let us support the effort of the nine U.S. presidents and 5 Chinese leaders that have shaped a positive U.S.-China relationship to where it stands today. Most importantly, let us support the efforts being made by President Trump and President Xi to make this relationship even stronger. Thank you very much.
谢谢董建华先生，简单的回顾了中美建交的过程，特别指出了
China-U.S. relationship, and then some of the significant key issues happened. And he would urge us to continue to support of the common effort. Now, we now hear Mr. Cui Tiankai, the Ambassador Cui Tiankai's speech. Shu Jingshi's speech.
Well, I want to join with everyone in welcoming our friends from China and our friends from all over the world who have gathered for this Belt and Road Initiative gathering here in the United States. This is a very important initiative, and those of us who have long hoped to see China's participation in the world and help the development of the world and contributing to a better world, I think many aspects of the Belt and Road Initiative are deeply welcomed. As President Rudd said, many in the United States do not understand the key components of the Belt and Road Initiative. And we think it's a very important service of the Asia Society Policy Institute to build a bridge of understanding for what the hopes and dreams are in China for the Belt and Road Initiative, and how those in the United States that want to connect and understand and participate and help also create a momentum for the initiative can work with China better. Today is a very practical day. There'll be an exploration of the very key components of the Belt and Road Initiative. I will say that I know it's envisioned as a dialogue, not as being talked to, but really participatory, so that everyone who is here comes away with a better understanding of this initiative. In my work at the United Nations, U.S. government, I've seen a tremendous evolution of China from a nation that needed the help of the world to a nation that now not only feeds itself, but is actually working with the world to help solve problems. The world needs China as a participant in this, and it has long been, I think, a key goal of China to really not only be able to solve problems in China, but also to be able to take the talents of China more broadly. The Belt and Road Initiative is only a few years old, but I know the vision is big, and as Kevin Rudd said, we will see the development over the next decades for the impact of this. I will say that the infrastructure gap in the world is not just about roads, it's not just about structure, but it's about human lives and the quality of human lives and the ability of whole societies to transform poverty. And so the infrastructure gap in the world, which is in the trillions of dollars, is a key one for the world to solve together. China's really good at infrastructure. The U.S. historically understood the power of infrastructure to transform a nation from an agrarian nation to a nation that had much more capacity and a broader-based economy. And I think this is a natural place for the U.S. and China to work together. And I think the demands and needs throughout the developing world for greater infrastructure, there is not a mechanism in the world today to meet those needs. We're not even close to meeting those needs. And so I really urge everyone here to think beyond even the vision of this initiative as to how the world can really come together to put infrastructure front and center. Infrastructure is about saving lives. Infrastructure is about saving the lives of the children of the world and future generations. infrastructure can unlock human potential. So let's remember, as we do this, it's not just about construction and business and plans and roads and all of that, but it's the ability for people to connect, both through digitally and through roads and through other means to solve human problems. So we're proud here today at Asia Society to host this initiative. We want to stay with this. We want to continue to work with our partners in China to bring a greater understanding and to welcome all of you in this dialogue on the Belt and Road Initiative. So our thanks to our partners, our thanks to our policy and team here today with Wendy Cutler, who served in the United States Trade Representative's office and heads our Washington office, and Danny Russell, who has joined us from the State Department, and others on Kevin Rudd. Thank you, Kevin, and thank you to our Chinese host.
The speech, and she is the president CEO of the Asia Society, and they want to understand more about Belt and Road Initiative and to strengthen the cooperation between the U.S. and China in the BRI. And so now that we would ask the Ambassador Tian Kai to present his speech.
Thank you, Minister Zhao. And let me also thank Asia Society for inviting important high-level dialogue. I also want to thank Mr. Xie Dong for his inspirational keynote speech on China-U.S. relations. And we are grateful to you, sir, for traveling all the way from Hong Kong and share with us your important views. Oh yeah, I see Mayor Bloomberg. Welcome. Let me also welcome Mayor Bloomberg. I think the fact this high-level dialogue has drawn such an important audience shows how timely it is. And indeed, we are at a very important moment in China-U.S. relations, a moment that is challenging and promising. Challenging because we have unprecedented tasks before us, both in our relations and in the world at large. Promising because we have a real historic opportunity to build a better and stronger relationship between our two important countries. Historians tell us that so far there have been 16 cases in history where a so-called rising power encounters a so-called established power. And out of the 16, 12 ended in war and conflicts. And the other 4 were more peaceful transition. But I think what China-US should aim at should not be like the 12 that ended in war and conflict, nor should it be similar to the 4 of relative peaceful transition. Because we are not working for a transition of global dominance from one country to another. We should aim at building a new type of mutually beneficial partnership to confront our common challenges, and a new community of shared interests between us. If we succeed in doing this, we'll be opening a new page in history, and will benefit both our countries and the world at large. And there are signs of steps in the right direction. Just 2 months ago, President Xi Jinping and President Donald Trump had their first meeting at Mar-a-Lago, Florida. It was a very successful and productive summit, maybe more successful than most people would expect. It sets the tone and direction for our relations to go forward. It also decided to set up 4 dialogue mechanisms: the diplomatic and security dialogue, comprehensive economic dialogue, law enforcement and cybersecurity dialogue, and social and people-to-people exchange dialogue. And for the diplomatic and security dialogue, the first round will take place 1 week from today in Washington, D.C. For the comprehensive economic dialogue, we already have some early harvest of this 100-day plan. And I'm quite confident when they meet sometime in July to the end of this 100 days, there will be a new plan for 1 year, 2 years, and the years to come. And I would suggest in managing our economic and trade relations, we have to keep a couple of things in mind. First, we have to keep in mind that our economic relationship is mutually beneficial. Our 2 economies are so interdependent, and the interdependence is still growing. So there is no zero-sum game. Trade war is no option. Currency war is no option. Unilateral protectionism is no option either. Of course, there will be some competition between us. This is always the case. But such competition should make both of us better and stronger. It should not exclude cooperation. It should not aim at eliminating competitors. Because without competitors, you lose your own competitiveness. Number 2, we have to keep in mind that we do have shared responsibility for the world. We are the number 1 and number 2 biggest economies in the world. The strength and sustainability of our economies would affect the prospects of global economic growth. And how we manage our economic relations will have a major impact on the evolution and effectiveness of global economic governance. Especially in today's world, when there is growing uncertainties and pressing need for economic restructuring, China and the United States should work together and make all the right choices and show the way forward to the world. It is a choice between openness and isolation, and China certainly stands for openness, because openness will enable innovation, will lead to new opportunities, and create new life for the world economy. It is a choice between connectivity and self-reliance, and China stands for connectivity, as manifested by the Belt and Road Initiative. This connectivity is not only about linking our infrastructure, roads and bridges together, but also about policy, trade, financial flows, and people-to-people exchanges. This connectivity will make it possible for us to build stronger bonds among nations and really join hands to respond to the growing global challenges that transcend national boundaries. And the Silk Road in history did have some geographical scope, but the Belt and Road Initiative is open to all. So we would very much welcome increased participation by the United States. Let's make it another joint venture between us. It is also a choice between win-win and zero-sum game. Stand for win-win approach. We have to address the imbalances and disparities both within and between nations. We have to adapt to the new realities and guide the economic globalization, cushion its negative impact, and deliver its benefits to all countries and all nations. In today's world, technology is transforming our economy, our society, and even our daily life in a very profound way. There's a growing interest, maybe also some concern about the development of artificial intelligence. People are talking about how AlphaGo defeated world champions in chess and in Go. But I still believe we human beings, we have to make the right choices ourselves. We have to overcome the problems by ourselves. And human history will have to be written with human hands. As President Xi said at Davos last January, and I quote, "When encountering difficulties, we should not complain about ourselves, blame others, lose confidence, or run away from responsibilities. We should join hands and rise to the challenge. History is created by the brave." I'm confident that people of China and people of the United States, we do have the courage, the wisdom, the vision, and determination to rise to the challenge and take the lead and to build a new type of relations between us that will benefit our two countries and the world at large. So in conclusion, let me wish this high-level dialogue a complete success. Thank you.
谢谢崔天凯大使，他从更高的角度对中美关系。
Cui, he talked about our relationship from a very high abstract level. Mr. Bloomberg has arrived.
Mike Bloomberg, former mayor of New York. Welcome to the Asia Society. You're no stranger to our midst. Three-term mayor of New York. My experience of politics is getting re-elected once is tricky. Getting re-elected twice is super tricky. And so, well done. But more importantly, in his term as mayor here, given one of the things that we'll be discussing this morning, he reduced the carbon footprint of New York by 19%. This matters. This really matters. Which brings us to some of the things he's doing today. You've all heard about his great company, Bloomberg LP. We all know of what it does in the world of news, economic and financial news in particular. Bloomberg Philanthropies, more than $4 billion donated by him personally to a range of public goods around this country and around the world. And one of those is sustainability and climate change action in particular. Those of you who followed Paris closely, I know our friends in China did, know that apart from all those guys and girls running around the place who were heads of government, there was someone else as well, and that was Mike, organising a different coalition of global action, which was the mayors of the major cities of the world, more than 100 of them, because what lies within the powers of municipalities and subnational or provincial governments is a whole lot of regulatory authority and a whole lot of ability to influence development in a way which brings down carbon footprints. He knows that, about it. More importantly, he's put his cash behind it, and he's actually led it. Which brings us into the current situation in which we find ourselves globally. As CH has mentioned in his address before, the United States, through its president, has taken a particular decision on climate change, which people like me do not support. But he went to the US elections, presidential elections, indicating he would do that. He's done it. But for those of us who care about the planet and how to bring down greenhouse gas emissions, there's a practical problem and challenge, which is what do we now do with the world's second largest emitter, this country, to actually move the game forward and continue to act to bring down American carbon emissions, but also carbon emissions by municipal and subnational governments around the world. And so, Mike, just as a global citizen myself, but also a climate activist over a couple of decades now, thank you for what you've done. It's really good stuff. So, Mike, we've been talking about One Belt, One Road, and we've been talking about what our Chinese friends actually mean by that. We welcome your contribution, and we're particularly interested to know where you think the sustainability debate will now go between these two countries, what your initiative with mayors and subnational governments will now do, and perhaps a few reflections on the importance of carbon footprints from a whole new burst of infrastructure investment coming out of the Belt and Road Initiative as well. And anything you'd like to say to us, and there's a podium for you.
Well, Kevin, thank you, and I'd be remiss if I didn't thank you for everything you've done to improve relations between the great superpowers and everybody around this world, and particularly your country, which has always been a great ally of the United States, which I've never ceased to tell people about. I think Australia has fought with us every single war we've ever been in. And you've taken some great losses to make sure that the world is safe for democracy, and thank you for everything. I did want to thank the China Center for International Economic Exchanges and the Asia Society for hosting us and for inviting me to speak. The fact that I live in the neighborhood made it somewhat easier to accept. If it was downtown, I'm not sure I would have. But seriously, in this group, I thought I'd give my remarks in both English and Mandarin. But I'm not sure that everybody in the room is as fluent in both of those languages as I am, so I'll just stick to English so that our Chinese friends can practice their English just as I keep practicing my Spanish. And at the outset, let me also acknowledge two distinguished guests, one of whom I just heard him speak. Mr. Ambassador, Ambassador Cui is an old friend of mine. We've been friends for a long time, socially as well as in business. And CH, who I have known through Henry Kissinger for 10 or 15 years now. I have enormous respect for both of these guys. And I sometimes pinch myself to say, I know famous people like both of them. I didn't grow up in a world where I knew famous people, so thank you for being my friends. In any event, I think a great example of how the U.S. and China can work together towards common goals is a meeting like this, and that's never been more important. China is America's largest trading partner, and we are the largest trading partner for China. Our economies are more interconnected today than ever before, and we both have a stake in each other's success. Cooperation between our two countries is critical to meeting all the big challenges from around the world, and climate change to trade and finance are all things that we care about. And as the ambassador said in his speech, there will be competition. That's just natural, and competition's healthy. Competition gets the best products at the best prices for consumers, and if can also create the jobs that people all around the world need. And I think the more we work together today and the more ideas that we share, the faster progress will arrive. Now, growth in China, it helps to fuel growth here in the United States, and that is why it has been very encouraging to see the important steps that China has taken to open up its markets to global investors. It's never open enough. We always want to work for more, but that's what two countries sitting down across a table should be negotiating rather than just yelling and screaming at each other. And I think we've got to make sure that we don't forget that this is not, and diplomacy is not a zero-sum game. We both are dependent on each other, and it's the same thing with climate change. If somebody in this world, any place in this world, reduces pollution, everybody in the world benefits, and if somebody does not, everybody suffers. And once again, it's not we versus us. You should know that Bloomberg is strongly committed to helping investors in both countries seize new opportunities presented by financial reform in China. In April, our company hosted the first high-level U.S. China business forum after President Trump and President Xi met in Florida. I think it was a productive forum that helped to forge new partnerships. And over the last year, I've also been chairing a working group to help make it possible to trade and clear Chinese currency in the United States. Our group includes leaders from both countries, and since we started working, we've seen a lot of progress, and let me just give you a few examples. Last year, the Bank of China, New York's branch, was named by the People's Bank of China as the first RMB clearing bank in the United States, and the first American certificate of deposit in Chinese currency was also issued, as well as the first U.S.-based license to trade Chinese stocks and bonds. For those of you that are not familiar with financial matters, these are important steps which take away a lot of the friction to do business, and the more business we do back and forth, the more the citizens of both countries benefit. China took an important step by allowing foreign banks and foreign investors direct access to its interbank bond market, the third largest in the world, and Bloomberg is working to build on this progress. And in March, we became the first financial data provider to include Chinese bonds and global fixed income indices. If you have data and you have the ability to transmit it and to share it and to use it in your decision making, you get a lot better results. We also launched the RMB Bond Suite, which is a set of tools to help investors access the Chinese bond market. And we are lending our full support to China's Bond Connection program, which offers a way for institutional investors to access China interbank bond markets. These steps will strengthen trade and business partnerships between our two countries and create jobs in both, and they will help make American companies more competitive by reducing the costs of doing business. They'll also help fuel new investment in infrastructure in both our countries, which really is very important. History has shown that investing in infrastructure is one of the best ways to spur economic growth, and China is putting that lesson to very good use. China's very ambitious One Belt, One Road initiative calls for major investment in new infrastructure throughout the region. Just to put that in perspective, One Belt, One Road covers an area that includes about 50% of the world's GDP and about the same share of the world's trade. And that opens up great new opportunities for investors, and to shine a spotlight on those opportunities, our company has hosted a series of events around the world called China Navigating the New Silk Road. And already this year, we've held these events in Geneva, in Hong Kong, Frankfurt, and we'll host another tomorrow in London with remarks by the Chinese ambassador to the UK, and we'll continue the tour for many more countries in the months to come. More collaboration between the United States and China is also critical to fighting climate change, which poses serious risks to both our countries, as Kevin mentioned. As you know, a few weeks ago, President Trump announced his decision to withdraw the United States from the Paris Climate Agreement. Now, I'm not here to criticize that decision. As Kevin pointed out, the president, when he was campaigning, said that's what he would do. He was elected by a majority of the electoral votes and almost a majority of the public votes. And he has done exactly what he said. I'm here not as a critic, but I'm here to tell the world, and I think it's important that the world knows, that the United States people is still committed to lead the way in fighting climate change no matter what happens in Washington. Over the last decade, the United States has reduced its emissions more than any other nation, and Washington has had very little, if not zero, to do with that. The bottom line is the United States is already halfway to its COP21 goals for 2025, and the progress that we've been making has been accelerating, not declining. And the federal government has had virtually nothing to do that, state governments very little. It's all been done by local governments, but mainly by corporations and individuals who've been changing what they do so that they use less energy and generate less pollutants into the air. And I think it's fair to say you can see the two biggest countries in the world, China and India, also for the first time really focusing on climate change. We all see stories on television showing the pollution in the big cities in Asia where you can't really see across the street. That is just not tolerable. The citizens of those countries will not be able to live there. Their children are getting hurt, and the governments respond. And I think the Chinese government and the Indian government will be the two leaders going forward here in trying to reduce carbon emissions. And certainly the United States is going to meet its goals because the people and the companies that have been working on it will continue to do what they've been doing. Businesses and cities and citizens all care about the air they breathe, the water they drink, and they're going to do something about it. I have a cartoon at home of two cavemen sitting in front of a fire in their lion cloths, and one says to the other, I don't get it. All our food is organic, our water is pure, our air is clean, we get plenty of exercise, and we die at age 25. Nevertheless, I think if you have those things today, you will live a lot longer, and we want to make sure that everybody does. By following the President's announcement a week or so ago, each of these groups that I talked about, the public and the private world and local governments, have announced that they are committed to meeting America's Paris Agreement goals. Bloomberg Philanthropies has been organizing them into a giant coalition, which we called America's Pledge, and we will lead an effort to measure the commitments of everyone in the pledge, and we'll also guarantee the funding that the UN Climate Change Secretariat could lose from Washington if Washington decides not to honor that commitment. I think they probably will, but if they don't, I just wanted to make sure that the Climate Change Secretariat did not worry about whether they were going to get paid at the end of the week, that they could continue to do their work, and they are doing that. China, you should know, has reaffirmed its commitment to the Paris Agreement because it rightly believes that doing so is in the country's best interest. China does deserve a lot of credit for the leadership, which sets a strong example for other countries. And I'm confident that by working together, our countries can reach and exceed the pledges that we've made. The more we work together across borders and create partnerships between businesses and governments, the stronger our future will be. And so I think today's a great chance to do that. And again, I wanted to thank the Asia Society and the China Center for International Economic Exchanges for bringing us together. Let me just repeat that these are two of the greatest countries in the world, the two superpowers. They just have to work together for both our mutual future, but also for the world's future. And I think with leaders like your chairman, CH, thank you for everything you do, and Mr. Ambassador, keep up the good work. The ambassador was at one point told me he was going back to China, but he's still here, and I'm going to call President Xi and tell him you have to stay here. We want you here. It's a good citizen. Anyways, thank you all.
Thank you very much, Mike. And I've been advised that the Mayor has to head off. We thank him for his remarks, and we look forward to future collaboration with you. Back to you, Mr. Zhao.
我们第一个阶段的开幕式应该说很完美的，超额的，不仅
The session has exceeded our time limit, yet it is also richer than we had expected. The next segment will be chaired by Ms. Shi Jingshi, a future and new collaboration in the economic area between our two countries. Next will be discussion of One Belt, One Road. And it will be chaired by Mr. Wei Jianguo.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Wei, Father Vice Minister Commerce. Right now, I'm Vice Chairman of CCIE. CCIE is the first important think tank in China, led by Father Vice Premier Zheng Peiyan. It is a great honor for me to be participant in this very important think tank's dialogue among our two countries. 非常高兴，我的朋友陆克文，我们在1个多月前的习主席举行的"一带一路"晚宴上坐在一块儿。
We were at the dinner for One Belt, One Road initiative. At the time that Kevin talked to me and said that, well, you see that we do have a lot of issues to discuss within our two countries. And you also talking about BRI and then U.S. relations. So we need to have a forum. So today that we have two different sessions, we have two heavyweight participants to come to talk to us about these two issues. And as Kevin said that, U.S. China relation, what relations it would be, and what is the future for us, and what kind of economic relationship is this? Is there going to be a war? 100 plans, we have already talked about our import, and then what about BRI? Also, Kevin said that how much is the investment, and who's the investor, and what kind of projects involved, and what about the transparency, and also that from the geopolitics, what is the kind of a situation it will be. So today, we are honored to have two experts. The first one is from the Ministry of Commerce, and Mr. Lin Feng, the Director of American Affairs, and he is going to spend 5 minutes to present to us the report on U.S.-China economic relations. Now, then, may we invite Mr. Lin.
Thanks, Mr. Wei. I'm a little bit surprised and honored to be the first presenter that speaks in Chinese. 大家早上好，很高兴有机会借今天的智库交流活动，介绍一下中国商务部近期发布的关于中美经贸关系的研究报告。
China economic relations. As everybody knows, that U.S. China will be the largest economic bodies, and that will be U.S. China's future economic direction is actually creating a lot of impact for the world's economics. March of this year, every I receive questions from the media. They're concerned about the trade war between our two countries. And so, in fact, that we have the foreign meetings between the two leaders, and then giving us a very clear directions of our future. And there is going to be 100 plan, and then in fact that we have some of the benefits from it. And then in reality, that we can see that there is cooperation between the China and U.S. and it is creating the common interest for both countries. And in fact, that is actually in answer to a lot of media's questions already. And in the 2 weeks that we have ago that we have promulgated the report, it very clearly to set out our view, our philosophy, and on the China-U.S. economic relations. And it has divided into 6 parts. It's talking about the history, the background, and then also the nature of our relations, and then also talking about some considerations and issues of our future cooperation. First of all, China it is the biggest developing country, and the U.S. is a developed country. And then what is the relationship between our cooperation? And then we also see that we have this global arena, and then we see a lot of the imbalance of the wealth distribution and the economic disparity. This is a great issue for both of our countries to tackle on. We also that we hope that to have a more rational development on the globalization. We also talked about the legal protection in our cooperation. It is a process of our cooperation, our discussion with a lot of data and a lot of history. We can see that with our cooperation, it can only bring us a win-win situation, and it will create a balanced world order, and it can protect the interests for both countries. And with the speed and the rate of our economic development, fact that we have lots of this increase of our trade. In fact, that China has the service industry, and then all of these trade has the significant growth. In fact, that in China, and then in China there are a lot of tourists and also students coming into the U.S. that they spend and then created a lot of the revenue for the U.S. and then according to CDC, every time that there was a tourist and then the student coming into the U.S. that created this revenue for the U.S. and it is a great interest for the U.S. economy as well. And then also that the U.S. is the second largest trade partner for the U.S. and it is the biggest export for the Chinese product, because U.S. can bring to China a lot of technologies development and capital investment, so that they have this interdependence relationship. The third is that. And then there are a lot of concerns for China as well. For example, overcapacity and the intransparency of the Chinese government, and also the intellectual protection. All of that, these are the systemic issues, and China has a lot of great discussion with the U.S. partners in all of these different issues. Both parties has arrived at some of the consensus. Of course, there are some of the disputes still existing, but this is a normal course of the cooperation. We feel like that when both countries can get to understand each other a bit more and understand the issues confronted by both countries, and then it can avoid more of such a dispute and also get to more understanding and have a greater cooperation. The last, I would like to say that in order to have this balanced development of the economics in both countries, we need to have strategic dialogues and the conversation, and that is actually a lot of the concerns for the media as well. We hope that we can have these bridges and the platform of the dialogues, and then we can get to have more understanding between the two countries. We can explore that how we can cooperate in terms of the energies and the agricultural products, and then maybe that we can actually expand the market for the U.S. products. I remember that in May in the BRI conference, we heard that we are not just having in mind about the balance of power. We need to think about the long term of situation. So I believe that it is the right way to go forward to think about the long-term development. In order to have such a long-term relationship, we need to have more in-depth conversation. We expect to hear more of such conversation, and then in order to put into reality of the healthy, balanced development of both countries and to benefit the global world. Thank you.
非常感谢林峰处长的
Thank you, Mr. Lim Feng's briefing on the report on our U.S. China economic relations. In fact, that he is a member of our working group, and then he participated into a series of the discussions. Now that may we invite Mr. Xia Weiming. He is the Deputy Director for the National Development and Reform Commission and the Office of Western Development, and he is going to present the white paper of a Belt Road Initiative.
尊敬的董建华主席，
Most esteemed Mr. Dong and Mr. Zhao and Mr. Ambassador Kai, and then ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Last month in Beijing, we hosted a international relationship summit, and we have promulgated this white paper to the media. And this white paper described the Belt Road Initiative's momentum and the cooperation. for this. In fact, that we have this Belt Road initiative had continued our Silk Road in the ancient time, and then it had also integrated with some innovation with so that to support the international collaboration. For the international collaboration, I can tell you with 8 points, and that will be very briefly to outline this contribution. Number one is that we build together this human foundation with our interest of the various interests. We respect the sovereignty of different countries. We take care of different countries' consideration and to build the prosperity for all. Number two is that we use the land and also the sea to build our Silk Road. And the number three is that to collaborate, to share, and then to enjoy together. That is, of course, a principle that China had started. But even though that we started to promote this idea, we hope that everyone can participate. Number four, to peacefully collaboration, and then to build a win-win situation for all. This is the spirit for the BR initiative. We hope to build a peaceful road, an open road, an innovative road, and a balanced road. Number five, we mean to have 5 different aspects of this project. The fifth aspect is that with the land Silk Road and the sea Silk Road to work together, to connect together. And from the west and the east of China, go through Russia to go to Mediterranean Baltic Ocean, and then to use and then also to get to the Persian Gulf. The third is that from the westerly south of China to go into the Indian Ocean. The fourth is that from the coastal region of China go through the South Sea, and then Malacca Strait also get to ended at Europe. The number 5 is that using China to go into the Pacific Ocean. These are the 5 different routes, and that is not only to navigate, it is actually to connect our culture and our economics. Number 6 is that we have 6 corridors and 6 routes. 6 corridors, meaning that it is the economic corridor from the China and Europe, and then also that the China as Asia, and also that the Pakistan, and all of these different countries. We are going to build these corridors, economic corridors, and 6 routes will be including railroad, highway, and then waterway, and then airway, and also some of the superhighways. We build together to connect together. And then we have connected the 7 geographical regions, is the Southeast Asia, South Asia, Central Asia, Western Asia, and then Europe, and then also the Antarctica. So all of these different continents we can connect together. We hope that using this idea to open to all countries, we will not exclude any countries. Number 8 is that with this infrastructure to create the economic collaboration, encouraging energy collaboration, cultural and collaboration, we protect also that we aim at protecting our environment as well. So these are the framework of the Belt Road initiatives, and with the white paper, we outline all this importance, and then to create a blueprint, and then also creating some of the aspects to illustrate how to turn this plan on paper into reality. So basically, that we build together this Belt Road initiative with the 4 years of progress, that we do see some of them. The success in different stages. In principle, we had realized this global development, and then we hope that we can reap this fruit together as well in the future. Thank you. Thank you for both for your great introduction. And now that it is the media question session, we hope to encourage media to raise questions. However, in the interest of time, we need to proceed very quickly according to our schedule, so that we may just allow very limited time for the media. We can only allow 2 questions. One question concerning the report on the U.S. China economic relations, and one question is concerning about the white paper of Belt Initiative. You can only have 2 questions, okay? Now, I cannot see who are the media, so we are now officially opening the question sessions. We, as interpreters, cannot hear the question because there is no microphone.
你好，中央电视台记者王冠。
想
请教的一个问题就是这个中美经贸的报告上面说，美对华贸易逆差的数字被夸大，并且对现在的国际贸易统计方法提出了质疑。请问是为什么？第二，这个报告说贸易顺差反映在中国，但利益顺差在美国。
And also you mentioned trade deficit actually reflected in the U.S., but then the trade surplus is actually in China, but the trade benefits in the U.S. Can you actually give us an introduction why there is such a situation?
And also, can you elaborate on the assertion that the trade surplus lies in China, but the surplus of benefits lies in the United States? Thank you very much.
Okay, so maybe we will Mr. Lin to respond to your question. Mr. Lin?
Please.
And it's here.
我想您刚才提了2个问题，
You have
一
two
个是逆差
questions.
问
One
题，
is
一个当
about
这2个问题
the
的相关的，
deficit
另外一
question,
个是
and
关
then
于
the
这个
other is
利益
the
的问题，
trade
贸易中的利
benefits
益问题。
is actually
关于
in
逆
the
差问
U.S.
题，实
Okay,
际上
now
因为
the
中美
trade
双方
deficit
的统计
question
是存在差
because
异的。
there are the
中方的统
different
计是
statistic
2500多亿美
method
元，美方的统计
statistic
根据
data
不同的口
collection
径，有说
in the
3400多亿美元，
different,
有说
and
3660
there
亿
some
美
people
元。
talking about that
但是我们关键的是看如何看。
1 deficit, and some people say 3.1 kind of a deficit, but then sometimes they may not include the service trade, and then because in 2015 that the trade on the service side of is actually 5-point-something billion, and but then that is actually that figure has a bit of difference in the U.S. data and the China's data. So I think that because of that has a difference in terms of the number, and also the process trade has a different numbers as well in the U.S. number and also the China's data. But then definitely there is China has a trade surplus, and then the surplus benefit is in the U.S. because you can see that a lot of the reports from bank they have already illustrated talking about that in fact that for example in using iPhone as an example, $500 about, but then China actually get the $5 and then the $300-something of benefits actually coming from the U.S. company. So that's why the surplus in the U.S. in China, but then benefits in the U.S.
Okay, now and Mr. is limited. But because we have this public opportunity to raise questions, I think before we go into some private sessions, I'd like to hear from anyone else, either from round the table who has any questions to ask, or anyone else from the broader media, Chinese international media. So this is a good opportunity. Others will come later. There's a chap with his hand up there, and then let's just keep it rolling for a little while, if that's okay with you, Mr. Wei. Yeah.
你好，我是新华社驻纽约的记者。我有一个问题，同时提给陆克文先生和赵启正先生。我们知道，在今天的对话会之前，中国的智库代表团去了艾奥瓦州，不仅和当地的 智库官员有个会面，而且他见了
The
当地
question
的
is,
农场主。
somebody visited
我想请问
Kansas,
二位，像
visited
这种智
a
库由
rancher.
民间
I want to ask
我
you,
们的高端学者、
yours
高
is a
端智
think
库的对
tank.
话，对于中国和美国未来经贸乃至全方位
What's your
关系的
take
发展有
on
什么益处？
the future of Sino-US trade?
这个下面请陆克文先生解释。
Now I
Yeah,
call
well,
on
I'm sure CH will
Kevin
have his
Rudd.
own views on this, but if I could simply respond to your question briefly in English. Look, I think there is a critical role for independent think tanks in the United States and around the world to think through the future models of US-China economic relations, which is your question. We know where Mar-a-Lago got to. We know it's one of the principal working groups established between the two presidents. We have yet to see what its results will be. But it's good, as CH said, that there, and the ambassador said, Ambassador Cui Tiankai said, that there is a process. I think one of the big questions which will be alive in think tanks in the United States is how to analyse the BRI initiative. There are supporters, there are opponents, there are people who don't know. And whether this becomes a common platform for strategic economic cooperation or not is very much an open question. And that goes down to the forms of economic governance which applies to the project overall. Questions of transparency, questions of the financial arrangements, questions of, as I said before, build, own, operate, build, own, transfer, shared equity, and pricing arrangements for various infrastructure projects. So for ourselves here at the Asia Society Policy Institute, again, as a bridge builder, we will try to adopt as independent and as neutral a position as possible to try and understand the detail of this project which unfolds. My experience of the American side of the U.S. China economic relationship is that they're very practical, they're very pragmatic, they want to know how it works, they want to know whether there's an opportunity for U.S. businesses or whether there is not. They are that sort of folks. So I think there's a role for us to assist in building that process. Are there any other questions, either from participants here in the forum or from the media during this part of the because, as I said, this is an opportunity for people to have their say.
一带一路，好，最后一个问题。
There's someone else up the back there, I think.
后面。好，陆克文先生帮我看一看，因为他没有看不见。
The Chinese 2 decades miraculous. Subway, high speed, and so on. New York City is experiencing an infrastructure crisis, a mass transit breakdown. The chief of the China Investment Corp estimates that the U.S. requires $8 trillion in infrastructure. President Trump calls for $1 trillion. My question is, can the CIC, can the Chinese government, Belt and Road Initiative, engage with the U.S. in the magnitude that New York City and that the U.S., with 50 priority projects that Trump's Commerce Department will take up this weekend, can the Chinese, the Belt and Road Initiative, engage with potentially hundreds of billions, even trillions, and the expertise, the incredible expertise of China, to assist the U.S. in this kind of mass transit and related infrastructure progress?
Well, I think...
肖市长回答。你 back, please.
Yeah, I think that would be very good if we had the Chinese side answer. By the way, my general protocol is only answer for the United States for projects under 1 trillion. When it's over 1 trillion, I hand it to the Americans. So, but let's hear from the Chinese first.
好，谢谢您的提问。基础设施啊，互联互通啊，是
infrastructure, mutual connectivity is the core of our proposal. Through the building of connectivity, we will try to get rid of the bottlenecks in our economic development. The Chinese government, in order to promote this, we want to do two things. We set up two things. One is the Asian Infrastructure Development Bank. The other is the Silk Road Development Bank. For the former, the investment is 100 billion. For the second one, the initial phase is 10 billion, and we also replenished 100 billion renminbi. These two banks are to serve One Belt, One Road, be it the United States or for other countries. Investment into the infrastructure development is enormous for the United States for the next 10 years. President Trump has asked for 1 trillion investment. This is also enormous. We hope that the United States government, from the legal aspect, from the institutional aspect, will open up the U.S. market for us. The Chinese investors want to come into the U.S. market. We want to help you improve your infrastructure development. Frankly speaking, yesterday when I came from U.S. airport to the hotel, I found your infrastructure is not as good as that in Beijing or Shanghai, even not as good as some of the large cities in the western part of China. So the demand is really here in the United States. The Chinese companies are willing to come here. We also want to collaborate with companies with other countries and to jointly invest in the U.S. market. So this is something we would like to see happen, and to closely collaborate with our U.S. partners and other partners from other countries. Thank you.
Sure. Mr. Zhao, would you like to answer?
第一个新华社的提问有一个问题就是，这次为什么中国的高端智库到农村去和农场主去交流？我想呢，这就是中国的智库想把他们的研究题目扩展到更广阔，想知道美国的基层的人是怎么想的，他们对中国的理解有什么不清楚，或者是有什么需求。 这样，我们的研究的领域呢，不只是对美国智库和对美国政府和对中国政府，而是对广大公众能够回答他们的问题，我们就会做得更好。谢谢。
Can I just add one thing on the infrastructure question before we close? And I can't speak for the United States, obviously, neither commercially nor politically. But what I do know something about is infrastructure investment in my own country, and this that the gentleman has pointed to in his question about the U.S. Transportation systems and infrastructure needs is very, very relevant. Number one, it would be my view that the deeper the U.S. China investment relationship is in general, on infrastructure in particular, the better. There has to be a mutuality about this in terms of China-US investment market access. You know what the American concern is, which is that Chinese investment markets are not sufficiently open. That has been a long-standing concern by all the peak industry bodies in the United States. So I think a good way to open the door for greater Chinese investment in US infrastructure will be to make sure that there is a complete level playing field there. Two, as a resident of New York myself and a frequent user of US public infrastructure, I always admire the patience and long suffering of the American people. If it was in Australia, there'd be a riot in terms of, frankly, how worn out so much of the public infrastructure is in this country. But my third point is there's a cautionary tale. In China, where I remember when I first went, there was no infrastructure. When I first arrived in China, we just had 马车, 自行车, 马车. Then things have changed a lot in 35 years. But guess what? This huge infrastructure build that you have undertaken in the last 20 years will have its own huge maintenance burden for the future. And when I go to various places in regional China and see already the maintenance problems becoming evident on roads and on other forms of new infrastructure, you're at the very beginning of the curve of what the Americans are currently at the end of a curve on, which is need to rebuild and reinvest second and third generation economic infrastructure. So I think we need to have a balanced view of this as well. I think, unless there are any other points from around the table, I should hand it back to the chair. And then I think, am I correct, Tom, we have time for a coffee? Or are we going straight through? Okay, so I'm going back to my good friend Mr. Wei, who will invite us to coffee. Tell our friends from the Fourth Estate, love you, but you got to leave.
这样啊，我收到很多媒体记者的这个要求，因为我们茶歇以后呢，要进行中美经贸关系，后来我们研究了一下，决定，这是一个这个 discussion closed door， 但是我们最近还是进行开放啊，这个
originally this was planned to be a closed session. But then we decided to open up. So if our media colleagues wish to stay on,
我现在宣布我们的整个商业式和这
so
个
our
先生的这
opening
个到此结束。
segment
我们下面进
has
行
come to an
5到5分钟的茶
Now
歇
we have a，
然后
5-minute coffee
回
break.
到这儿来进行我们
Then
的
we come
新
here,
的
we come back
议题
to
讨论
discuss the
中美
next
经贸关系
segment
新的合作接着陆克文先生所讲的
forms of collaboration
媒体同意
U.S.
对你们开放
China
谢谢大家。
And we have decided to open this up to the press. Thank you.
说得好，谢谢你。
你这一带一路这有个问题。